Hello, welcome to another program of Peace is Possible. My name is Joe Wasserman. Today, Barbara Pivarnik, a peace activist associated with the Catholic Worker, Back from the Brink, and Veterans for Peace, will be interviewing Paul Nyklicek regarding his recent article, If I Get Disappeared. Paul is a psychotherapist and member of Veterans for Peace. Both Paul and Barbara bring a strong faith perspective to their work around peace, and both participate in vigils for peace. How do we respond to people being taken off the streets at their homes and workplaces by masked ICE agents? Many of the people who are being taken are not ever heard from again. Thus, people are in effect being disappeared. What started as an attack on undocumented workers is being widened to include many more innocent people, including those who practice peaceful dissent. Now is the time to speak out for basic civil liberties and the war drums that go with these attacks. Barbara.
Before we begin, a note to provide us with some context for our conversation. According to the Marshall Project, the latest detention statistics released by the Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, has shown nearly 60,000 people are in detention, and that ICE and Customs Border Patrol, CBP, had booked more than 310,000 people into custody since October 2024, as well as deporting a similar number. Historic highs in U.S. immigration and deportation. ICE now detains more people without a criminal record than people with one, as well as placing a growing number of people in solitary confinement, resulting in severe psychological distress and issues and medical neglect. More than 7 weeks have passed, including continuing arrests made during the shutdown since the last comprehensive release of detention and deportation numbers. The public, the Immigration Department, and all of us who are concerned with human rights are concerned with this issue. So, Paul, your life continues to be one of principled nonviolence with a deep commitment to healing and honoring the sacredness of all people, of every person. As you say, and as you've said, no exceptions. Your professional work as a therapist, writing, and participation in peace and justice vigils are a strong witness to those values that you hold dear. So we're so grateful that you're with us this afternoon. So I'd like to begin, Paul. You recently wrote an article, If I Get Disappeared, as Joe alluded to, and you begin by writing, disappearing people is a time-honored practice of authoritarian rulers. Can you just tell us more what that means?
Sure, yeah. Thanks, Barbara. Thanks, Joe, for having me on. Yeah, I mean, as I kind of reflect on that, I think the first time I became aware of this was in like the early 1980s when I think I was in college and I saw this movie with Jack Lemmon and Sissy Spacek called Missing, right? It was about this American reporter, I think, who was in Chile in the early 1970s, and along with many others, he was abducted and quote unquote disappeared, right? And, later executed, which tragically seems to be what happens to many who get disappeared. And, that just sort of stuck with me. And, when all this started happening earlier this year, um, well, perhaps, in much more scary and obvious ways this year, um, it just resonated for me back to this, right? And there are, other historical examples, and uh, but the thing that kind of shines through for me is that there's this idea that you know human beings are perceived as the problem or problems, and that if we just eliminate certain human beings, then we problem solve, which I think is this really um, I don't know, just dangerous kind of belief that this is how problems can get solved. And it's now come home to us. This is not something that happens in other countries. This is something happening here. And last spring, I think the first story of this that I remember was the abduction, I believe, by ICE of Mahmoud Khalil, who was a graduate student at Columbia. And you know, people may be familiar with his story that he was, I think, just abducted off the street. I think probably singled out because of his involvement in the movements on college campuses to protest the actions of the Israeli government in Gaza for the last 2 years. But his story resonated because this was a young man who is married to um, an American citizen, and his wife was about to have a baby, and he was abducted just before this happened. So, being a husband and father myself, it resonated that way for me, and I couldn't help thinking about, God, what would it be like if I was that guy, if it happened to me. And so that's really what led to me writing the article.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Just briefly, how do you think people's lives are impacted by the practice of this political, deliberate disappearing? And maybe what are the psychological implications of what happens to people? And I think more than anything, you would be someone who could shed light on this, working with people in therapy as a living.
Yeah, yeah, sure. So my sense of it is that it's something that is designed to produce a lot of fear and a loss of hope, a sense of helplessness. There's nothing we can do. Um, and I suspect that this is by design. I don't think this is merely coincidental. Um, and it raises questions about, if this can happen here in the United States of America, and it can happen to, a certain segment of the population who live here. How can we be sure that it's going to be limited just to a certain category of people, right? Because I think once it's a slippery slope, or potentially is a slippery slope of, you know, the abuse of power this way to, in essence, terrorize people and to, have people to, in a manner, in a sense, walk around just fearful that, if you're not part of a privileged group living here, you are at risk. And I think we're seeing some indications of this now in, I think Charlotte, North Carolina is like the latest place
Mhm,
where,
mhm.
ICE has, descended or gone to. Uh, um, and there, I've not read all the details, but I think some indications that, people are afraid and people are avoiding being out in public if they think that they are at risk.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for that. The update, of course. You know, you have talked about in the article, and it's striking, but perhaps not so, about the United States being, and you use the words a fascist dictatorship. And maybe you can just enlarge on that concept and what it means and how you possibly think about that.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, I know it's a tricky term to toss around, you know, and I've heard many people say we've got to be really careful. You don't use that term lightly. Um, but I think it's, to me, at this point where it's no longer really an exaggeration, you know, to use the word fascist or dictatorship. You know, there are other terms we could use, I suppose, but those are words that people know and that resonate. To me, it really is about an extreme concentration of political economic power, and that you know, it's something that more and more seems to disregard the rule of law, and you know, laws seem to be, you know, either obeyed or disobeyed, you know, by those in power, depending on what may be expedient to you know, their objectives. And I don't know. There seems to be this goal of like eliminating certain groups of people from the general population. You know,
Yeah.
and you know, it seems to be a divergence away from, you know, the original idea of, you know, the United States Constitution, the sense of, you know, a republic that's based on democratic principles. That seems to be quickly eroding.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for talking about that and explaining it, because it is such a challenging concept. Um, how would you say, given all of these things that are going on, that people, that all of us could respond to this fear and violence and uncertainty and anxiety? Um, what can we do? What is our reaction so that perhaps, since this is a show about um, peace, we could
Mhm.
get to more of a sense of calm in this chaos, really?
Yeah. So that's a great question. I think I'll put it in these terms. I think the crucial thing for all of us is to remember who we really are as human beings. You know, I think there's a lot happening um, to try to dehumanize, you know, people, um, and I think that's the heart of the problem, right? So I think part of the challenge is for us to refuse to accept any sort of dehumanization, however that may be, you know, attempted, and at the same time for us to, you know, each of us refuse to do any sort of dehumanizing, you know, no othering, and I think that's kind of the heart of it, you know. I think part of what handicaps um, governments and you know, dictatorships or you know, wannabe dictators is this idea that uh, reality is limited just to, you know, the material, right? That it's all about things, and if that's the mindset, well then, you know, people can be regarded similarly as things, you know, and
Mm-hmm.
thus dehumanized. Okay, but I think this is exactly the weakness of, you know, dictatorships and fascism and authoritarian governments, you know, because that is not the whole story. That's a very, you know, sort of myopic view of who we are as people. Right?
Hmm.
We are much more than just a collection of subatomic particles that are grouped, you know, in a particular way.
Yeah, I think that's kind of perfect. I think it refers also to um, you viewing, and your word was that people are sacred, that we have, yeah, we have a sense and a identity of being more than where we're from, more than what we look like. But
Mhm.
in essence, we have a common universal thread that we are connected to one another.
Yeah, exactly. Right. That the reality is that sense of connection, right? That we are all profoundly connected to one another and to the rest of creation, right? Not just us human beings, but you know, every other kind of life, every other aspect of creation, right? We're not separate from any of it, and so that of course has implications for the climate crisis that
Mhm.
is happening along with the multiple political crises that are with us now.
Yeah. You know, something that really, I wouldn't say stunned me, but gave me pause was you mentioned that a few weeks ago, the president said he was going to deport homegrowns in a conversation that he had with the leader of El Salvador. And
Mm.
so, do you think people in the United States could become victims of deportation, whether they're um, immigrants or residing in the country and have a particular uh,
I
situation
mean,
at work?
until recently, I would have quickly said no to that. But in the past, not even a year, I have great uncertainty about that, and I cannot dismiss the possibility that something could be fabricated, to make it happen. You know, um, so I don't know. It's deeply concerning, right? And there are indications that it could happen. I mean, the president himself did say this, right? And if nothing else, he has been sort of shockingly transparent about some of
Mhm,
these
mhm,
kinds of pronouncements,
mhm,
and um, in my lifetime, I don't recall any president ever being so transparent, saying such things that are kind of mind blowing, really.
mhm. Yeah. You know, there was another quote that I took from your article
Mm.
uh, that definitely resonated with me, and I wanted you to talk more about it. And you said, quote, "We need to be physically nonviolent and aggressively, spiritually aggressive."
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I like that.
Um, Yeah, right. I mean, well, this is sort of the idea of principled nonviolence, right? This is the nonviolence in the tradition of Gandhi and King and others, but those are the best known proponents in recent history. And so, you know, neither King or Gandhi were passive in their approaches. They were aggressive, okay? And their aggressiveness, not to be confused with hostility, okay, was not hostility, but it was a form of aggressive, spiritually aggressive action. And I think, if I understand correctly, the point of this is to initiate transformation at a deep level in people who are on the receiving end of violence and oppression, but also to effect transformation in those who are perpetrating the oppression. You know, um, and I think that again that speaks to the what I believe is the reality of our profound interconnection with each other, and the sense that within every one of us there is a core that is fundamentally good.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Um, the problem is that that core goodness too often becomes obscured as a result of probably multiple traumas, that cause deep injury. And when people are deeply injured, they are not at their best
Hmm.
and may um, become reactive in ways that are hurtful.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that. I know I was involved and have been for many years with two concepts that really do connect. And I wanted maybe some examples or what you thought about the idea of responding with specific action. And also, the word is contemplation.
Yeah.
Maybe in layperson's definition, maybe kind of looking at those two examples of ways to respond to what is going on now. Action and is contemplation in some sense could be helpful.
Yes, right. So, um, I mean, the contemplative angle, I think, is this sense of, you know, becoming increasingly aware of one's true identity, right? Much deeper than just, roles that one plays in human life, right? As father, mother, daughter, son, worker, etc., right? That our true identity is way deeper than any such label. Okay. And, so it's a sense of like knowing who we are, which is challenging enough.
And how
And
could, if I could just say, is
yeah,
there a way of, I don't know, sitting still to kind of get to that identity? I know there's literature and talks about like specific examples of,
yeah. I mean, I don't have an exhaustive awareness of all of those. There are obviously, forms of meditation that can be useful this way, mindfulness practice. Um, my own practice is what's called centering prayer, which is a Christian contemplative practice, but it's really similar to Buddhist meditation, I think, in a lot of ways. So this is a way of sort of being with oneself and being open, and practicing being open internally. And it's necessarily combined with action, though, as you said, right? It's not enough just to, sit meditatively and think everything is fine, right? Because there's action that needs to happen as well. But I think the action needs to have that kind of contemplative basis, that sense of, um, I have an awareness of my identity and that what I'm doing emerges from that.
mhm.
There was someone, I'm not sure if I'm getting the name right. It might be Barbara Deming, who coined or demonstrated this symbol of the two hands of nonviolence, right?
Mhm.
And the one hand is like this, going like stop, right? Like I am opposed to the oppression, the injustice that's being done. And at the same time, there's this other hand that's outstretched, right? Like if you're going to shake hands with somebody. And the outstretched open hand is this expression of while I'm opposed to the harmful thing you're doing, I remain really open to you as a person, as a
Wow, that's great.
being, right? And that both of those are functioning at the same time.
Wow. Yeah, wow. I feel like I need to take a couple of seconds just to take that in. So beautiful. One hand and one hand open
Yeah,
to the person. Yeah. So
got it. That's it.
yeah, thank you for that. To
Mhm.
yeah. So as we're ending, I thought maybe I came across this quote by Dorothy Day,
Yeah.
and and she says inspiringly, what we can do in these challenging times. The older I get, she says, the more I feel that faithfulness and perseverance are the greatest of witnesses.
Mhm.
So we thank you for being faithful, persevering, um, and a witness to the people you serve in your work, your family, um, the people in the peace community and the community at large are very, very grateful. And Joe now is going to just give some additional information about what possibly could occur, how we can respond if ICE or some other person comes and tries to do some investigating. So, Joe?
Okay. Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you, Barbara. Thank you, Paul. Let me just mention a few things. If you have an encounter with ICE or know somebody who has an encounter with ICE, you can call the National Immigrant Justice Center. And look for Know Your Rights if you encounter ICE. Okay, so that would give you information about staying calm, your constitutional rights, etc. The other thing I'm going to suggest, actually, there's two other things I'm going to suggest. One is that people contact a group called Indivisible. There's a group that meets here in West Hartford, and hopefully there'll be a contact information pop up for people to contact Indivisible. They're working on this issue of protecting democracy and dealing with this intrusion by ICE agents into our communities. One thing that people can do, I'm thinking also, is call our call our legislators, email or call our governor, Lamont, contact our local town officials or city officials, and ask that not to cooperate with ICE until they unmask, until they respect due process, until there's a full accounting of everyone that they've taken, and until we get a clear sense of what's happening in these detention centers. And just find out who your local state representative and state senator is, call and email the governor and whoever your mayor or town council people are, contact them and ask that both the cities, towns, and the state not cooperate with ICE. California has already taken the step of demanding that ICE agents unmask, which is a very basic, I think, thing to ask for.
Yeah, just to put a little sense of closure, this is a show about peace. Peace is possible. So we'll hopefully take just a couple of seconds to breathe in and remember who we are as people, and that peace begins with us, with our sense of identity and our sense of connectedness, our sense of being sacred. And so we'll just take a couple of seconds to do that calm, that we are all one. So thank you all. Thank you especially, Paul, for everything that you shared and for who you are as a person and for all you do for us in the community. Take good care.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you.